So, hello and welcome to this conversation where we're going to explore part of the Eight Shields map of deep nature connection and cultural repair. That's really looking at how to bring Indigenous ways of being back to the present culture. And we're going to explore what's the east direction in that map. And it's me and Marielke here. And I think just to begin, we'll just introduce ourselves a little bit. So my name is Sky. And I'm the host and facilitator, along with Peter, of the Bringing It Home program, which is a year-long immersion into these teachings. And Marielke is a former student, so I'm going to be speaking with her a little bit about what both of our experiences are of this direction in our lives, and how we understand it maybe a little in the map. And I'm here in Galway in the west of Ireland. Marielke and I were both just celebrating the fun of that. We both have some snow at the moment, and just the beauty of this time of year. I'm in an old cottage here, hundreds of years old, in an old little village. That's me, and I'll pass it to you, Marielke, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Sky. Yes, my name's Marielke. I'm based here in West Lancashire, so northwest of England. And yeah, I've been enjoying the snow. I'm out in the countryside, so I've been able to have a nice walk in the sunshine and the snow this morning. And I'd completed Bringing It Home in 21-22, and also apprenticed last year as well. And really beautiful, rich journey, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation today. And it's the Bringing It Home program and the Eight Shields has really brought a lot to my life and understanding, I guess, the journey that I've been on, my own journey of belonging and remembering my true nature. And it's something that I love to support and help other space holders with now. Grateful to be here and to have this conversation.
Thanks, Marielke. Yeah, and just want to acknowledge and welcome in some of nature that helps us feel belonging, which is a lot of what we're going to be exploring today. We were just speaking some gratitude before we started recording, and I was out here tromping around in the icy snow at the edges of the hazel woodlands here, and seeing some of these spring flowers now underneath the snow of dandelion and daisy and wood anemone, which I had just seen the first wood anemones 2 or 3 days ago. And this village here is called Gortnadarach, which means the field of the oak. And I heard Marielke speak to really enjoying watching the animal tracks and seeing the fox and the hare and the pheasant, I think you said. So just wanting to acknowledge this whole beautiful natural world that is just embracing our houses here all around us outside, which we very much not just draw our inspiration from for this map of being, but actually it is what it is. It's actually mapping nature and using that as a navigation for how we can realign ourselves with nature's patterns and principles. So we are just going to give I'm going to give a little bit of a foundation of the map and just orient us to where we are now in the time of year and how that might translate into like more cultural layers of understanding. And then we're just going to dive in and have a bit of a conversation around how we've experienced this time of year, and what that translates into in our own lives. So we're here the beginning of March. So when we look at the compass, so just like the compass normally helps us navigate to the physical landscape, the Eight Shields refers to the 8 directions, and how when we use that as a map, it can help us navigate our personal lives and our culture and our community lives, and building community in particular. So in the east, we have the Spring-Equinox, which is around the 21st of March, because the sun literally rises in the east on the spring equinox. And around that, it's always rising to the east, but really it's that time of year where it really rises in directly in the east. And so we're almost there, but we're not quite there. And so we're in between what could be the northeast time of year and the east. And the northeast time of year here is celebrated as something called Imbolc, which is literally referring to in the belly, which many people believe is in the belly of the sheep. So the life is stirring, it's growing, but you can't quite see it yet. It's the seeds are germinating and waking up underneath the ground. That's the northeast time, and here it's around the beginning of February. So we're kind of in between the northeast and east. So today we're going to explore the east. We can feel it tugging on us and coming alive in different ways. And here there's a beautiful mythology about how the Cailleach, the winter hag, who brings in the cold, icy, windy, dark time of the winter, and the maiden of the goddess Bridget here, and she brings the light back in early February. But she's only a maiden at this time of year, and the winter hag is chasing her all around the landscape. And that's really, it's a teaching around how at this time of year, one day it can be winter, or 1 week it can feel like winter, like we're getting this late snow right now in March. And then at other days or other weeks, it can really feel the promise of the summer coming. The light is out, is increasing, the flowers are coming up. Bird song is just so beautiful here right now. Really, really building as birds are getting ready to mate and create their nests and all of that. But yeah, there's this to and fro happening. And in a story I recently heard of it, a telling of it, the Cailleach actually has a hammer with 2 heads on it, and she's going around and she's hammering the snowdrops back into the ground. So this morning as I walked out and I saw those flowers underneath the snow, I was like, wow, it's so literally happening right now. They're getting hammered, these delicate flowers. So just want to acknowledge where we are right now. So we're kind of in that in-between place, but we're going to speak to the east because that's where what is coming. It's where we're moving towards and what's coming alive. So the sun rises to the east in the spring equinox, and really it's the beginning. It's that birth time. So things are starting to come up out of the soil. So it's the clear, what we can observe on the landscape, the beginning of the cycle of life happening again. And everything here on Earth is built on the sun cycles, and then also the moon cycle having an effect within that as well. So these cycles of nature are the foundation of all of life on the Earth. So however much we are aware of that or not, of course, there's many things that change that in modern society, for example, where we get the same foods flowing in from all around the world at all times of year. So there's many things that are happening right now that maybe disconnect us from those cycles. But however much we're aware of it or not, that is the fundamentals of life. So we're looking in the east at the beginning of things. So we have that springtime of year, and we have the sunrise. So the beginning of the cycle of the day, the beginning of the cycle of the year. And so if we look at that, then culturally, we can ask ourselves, okay, if this is the beginning of things, how can we as human beings build on that? How can we tend to life in a good way? So it's all about welcoming. The East is all about how do we start things well? We start things well with a good welcome. So we're going to explore that a little bit in its multifaceted ways. And I'm just going to stop talking there and invite Marielke in if you want to just begin us there a little bit, and maybe you want to share a bit about your experience of welcoming in the East and how you've noticed that in your life.
Yeah, thank you, Sky. Yes, it's so the conversation that we're having just before, there's so many different layers to welcoming. But I think for me, where I'd love to kind of start is this sense of, there's a vulnerability inherent in kind of new beginnings and going somewhere kind of new, and actually the difference that can be made by how you're welcomed. So one of the things we're talking about when you enter into a new space, you know, that you haven't been to before. And I was remembering when I arrived, you know, began the Bringing It Home program, and you know, there was that sort of nervous anticipation of who was going to be there and what was it going to be like, and you know, had I made the right decision to sign up, even though it felt really kind of good in my body. And yeah, I was just really struck with how welcomed I felt into that space. And it was like it allowed my nervous system just to kind of settle and calm down, and felt so welcomed by the different people there. And I know each weekend I'm Bringing It Home as well, there's a song to be welcomed, and when welcomed by name, and there are all these different ways that help to support that feeling of welcoming, and that I really felt like a sense of arriving in a space where I could show up as myself. I could welcome all the different parts of me, you know. And I remember that first weekend, I think I wasn't feeling 100%. I was feeling quite sort of vulnerable, and all of that was welcomed. All of me was welcomed into that space. And I feel that that's such an important part of kind of any beginning. And we were talking before about how, you know, when you contrast that with perhaps, I know there are spaces that I've gone to before where there hasn't been that welcome, there hasn't been somebody who, you know, even said hello, or kind of allowed that space to really kind of settle and connect, you know, with everybody there before we sort of launched into what we were, you know, the event, for example, and then the difference that made in terms of how safe I felt to be my fullest self, and for all parts of me to be able to to be there. And so those beginnings and that sense of welcoming feels really important, and can make such a difference, I think. And it's something that I really bring in, and always have done, into my own spaces that I kind of create for people, as taking time for that welcoming, and to acknowledge that all of them, you know, is welcome into the space as well. It's really important.
So one thing I heard there strongly was like both an acknowledgement of one's arrival, and also then a welcoming of you just as you are. And I would say they're two pretty core human needs, aren't they? Acknowledgement and a full welcome for who you are. And so we're talking a lot about cultural repair. That's what this map is about. And so I'm curious what you think of around, like, why is that particularly potent? Why would we even not expect that? Why? What is it? What is the bigger cultural context where within that would be a healing experience, even? So not just in the moment that it feels good, but overall then as a pattern, if it repeats, to feel like we're consistently acknowledged and welcomed as we are. How is that a healing thing in the cultural context that we're in at the moment?
So what's coming through, I guess it's about sort of you know, that sense of being reminded that you know, that we are important, that you know, we are worthy of being kind of acknowledged, and that we're not broken, I think, as well. And that's something that I always like to bring into my spaces. You know, we're not, however, if somebody, you know, if we show up with vulnerability, it's not a sign that we're broken and we need to be fixed. It's just a welcoming of all parts of us. You know, we can welcome us in our grief and in our joy and our sadness, and you know, and our excitement, like all of that is part of the fullness of our human kind of experience and expression. And I think so often we can I remember this, you know, kind of growing up, it's that sense that there are certain parts of me that I felt I had to keep hidden. I can't possibly show that because I need to, be strong or brave or a good girl, or, all these parts that we kind of keep hidden. I can't be angry. Good girls aren't angry. All these parts that in a way we learn aren't welcome. But then in suppressing those, we kind of suppress parts of ourselves. And perhaps when we do experience maybe anger or grief or sadness, there can be this feeling that I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, I need to fix. Or other people, if they see that, I've definitely had experience of that, where it's this sense of they're wanting to fix and advise, and and yeah, I think we can end up feeling, I guess, that there's that sense of brokenness, or there's something wrong, or that I shouldn't be this way. And actually, when we can really feel that sense of acknowledgement, and just that all of us really is truly welcome, and that actually I don't see you, as broken, or that you're somebody to be fixed. Actually, I see the wholeness of who you are. I believe that you are whole. Then, that, I don't know, there's so much healing within that. When we're in spaces where all of us is welcome, we can then start to kind of welcome ourselves as well, in all those different parts, and remember that we're whole, that we're enough, that we're perfect just as we are. And and I feel emotional, like now I can feel that little bit of emotion of just like, gosh, if we all remembered that, how different that would be. And a lot of my, what I share now is my own journey of this remembering, this coming back into this sense of belonging, and of having many moments of feeling that I was broken, feeling that there was something wrong with me, or feeling angry at myself for feeling the way that I was feeling. But actually, how could I, and then coming to that place of more kind of love and acceptance for myself, and welcoming these parts of myself home. And definitely, I would say, and I sort of talk a lot about, coming into right relationships. So it's that coming into right relationship with myself, with nature, with others, which for me is ultimately a journey of belonging. And nature definitely has helped me with that. Definitely has helped me with that. And I think when we come back to that place of really kind of feeling a sense of being in right relationship with ourselves, with being in this place of right relationship and belonging, I feel then that it allows us to, we can take action, we can, create change from a place of wholeness, rather than kind of, feeling kind of, I don't know, broken, or that we're needing to kind of fix ourselves and fix, other things or other people or other things that are happening in the world. It's kind of coming from that place of wholeness. So that's.
Thank you, Marielke. Yeah. That makes me think of like the current situation where we're in, and how I was conditioned by, if you want to call modern Western society a culture. And I say that in the sense of how I understand culture is that it's that which connects, which we can see as to ourselves and our fellow human beings and the greater natural world. So in that sense, growing up in modern Western society, I saw a lot of ways how it disconnects. I mean, fundamentally, it's a model based on perpetual growth. That is what our economies, which is what drives so much of culture, is built on, which is constant resource extraction. And what it is that keeps that going is consumerism. And the messages I've gotten my whole life living in a consumer society is like, you need this to be better, you need this to be complete, you need just like this constant sense of like that more is needed, that what you have right now is not enough. and how that goes inside our bodies actually, and starts to build a culture of people that feel they're not enough one way or another, and that this constant striving for something that you're not, and how that stops us from sinking into what we actually are and what we do have to give, because we're focusing on what we don't have rather than what we do have. Yeah, and it reminds me of when I first started going to Eight Shields events over a decade ago. And just the model that's used for event organization and the welcome I felt there was really incredible. I remember thinking like, wow, I've never experienced such powerful containers. And at that point, I'd been to loads of workshops and trainings and everything. And then as my relationship started to build with it, kind of communities of people that were embodying the Eight Shields, learning it, committed to it, and then also professional community as I started working within it, there was something happening in it, which I learned a name for, which was the culture of allowance. So to allow us to be as we are rather than this striving to be something else. And what I noticed was just my nervous system could relax in that, because I wasn't activated in the sense of I'm not right in some way. And so what was happening was this like co-regulation, and we were all able to be present, be in our hearts more, find that inner peace more, and then really be together from that place, which is such a different place of this focus on how I'm not enough, and how that translates into I don't belong. And I'm curious to explore this word of belonging. I feel like you were speaking to it there at the end. What is it? What do you feel it is to belong somewhere?
Yeah, and it's interesting because in my own journey of belonging as well, understanding, I think I remember growing up, and even into early adult, is this sense of this longing to belong, which I know is like a human kind of need, to belong. It's part of even a survival kind of mechanism that we want to feel part of our group. But I remember growing up, just this sense of like being a bit of a chameleon, where I would try to change, work out, okay, how do I need to be to fit in, like belong in this group? But actually what I was doing was fitting in. And familiar with Brené Brown's work, I remember when I read some of that, I was kind of just like, oh yes, okay, I'm getting a much better understanding here of this journey of, that it's not about changing who we are in order to belong. It's about how can we, just be who we are. So there's that. And I guess for me, it's this sense of belonging. We can feel that it's maybe within a group. We want to feel a sense of, belonging within a group. But actually, for me, what's been most important for me is about this sense of belonging with myself. To really be in this place of like, being able to accept all parts of me, and to welcome all parts of me, and to allow myself to be, I don't know, in the grief as well as the joy, and being able to kind of move rather than feeling like I need to hide parts of myself, or that I get frustrated with myself. I had a very strong and loud internal inner critic, that used to kind of give myself a hard time for not being the way that I thought I should be. And it's been very much a sort of quietening of that, and much more of a kind of an inner coach or compassionate coach kind of coming in to go, actually, no, who you are is enough. and it was interesting for me. I think it was actually kind of grief, like experiencing a loss and going really kind of into the depths of grief and the dark night of the soul, if you like. That was my journey of reconnecting and reclaiming kind of these different parts of myself that I had pushed away into the shadows, and actually bringing those back into the light, and parts, and even kind of beautiful parts of me that I'd kind of pushed away, my vulnerable self, my kind of playful self, all these parts of myself that I'd really kind of pushed away, because I'd just been taught that, like you say, in this culture, it's about doing and progressing and achievement, and it's all about, I guess I got a sense from growing up, was that my worth was dependent on what I achieved rather than who I was. And so it's been a huge healing to come back to this place of actually really being able to love who I am, to share who I am, to be who I am. And one of the things I just shared yesterday in a circle I was holding, actually, was often what if the greatest way we could be of service in the world is to be our authentic selves and know that is enough. That actually there's nothing more that we need to do or be, that actually just being our authentic selves and sharing our gifts, which come directly just from really being kind of who we are. We're each unique, and we've each got unique gifts to share, and just knowing that we're enough. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's just this sense of deep kind of grounded kind of I feel like with both kind of welcoming and belonging and everything, there's this real sense of being kind of really in my body, and being in this place of that, connected to that peaceful center within me, which kind of feels like it's there in my heart. My mind is quiet, but I'm really here in my body and my heart. And when I'm arrive in a space, or when I'm welcomed into a space that allows me to drop into my body and drop into my heart, and for my mind to rest and to feel in that place of just being in a sense of safety, and that I'm in this place of regulation. Then that allows me to show up as my fullest self. It allows me to feel that sense of belonging, not only to myself, but kind of where the place that I'm in and the people that I'm in with as well. And that for me then it's kind of linking into the different parts of the wheel and the different directions either side. The southeast for me is very much that sense of coming into the body, and the northeast, that sense of kind of quiet mind. How we can draw upon the fullness of the wheel.
Just what you're saying there, just going to touch on that around, so in each of the 8 directions there's something called a sacred attribute, which is the attributes of human beings when they embody nature. That's kind of the closest translation. There's 8 of them. 7 of them came from the Lakota Sioux people through a man called Gilbert Walking Bull, who passed it on to John Young, who's the person who developed this wheel. And so the one in the northeast is quiet mind, which Marielke just spoke to. So we're in that place of death and conception in the northeast, and the mystery is really close there. That place of quiet mind, everything that brings us there, that helps us connect to that place, the unknown, the mystery. And then at the east we have inner happiness, or the happiness of a child. So it's like that feeling of like the beginning of the day and the sunrise, and when we get a good welcome, you know, how our just natural being comes forward. And then the southeast is the vitality. So it's like the cycle of life is beginning and energy is pouring through now. So it's like electricity in the body for a human being, vitality. But just when I heard you speaking there at the end, a phrase came into my mind, which was like, oh, she's such a natural, you know, or to be, oh, I could just be natural. You know, those phrases, like it says it all, doesn't it? Like I'm just imagining, again, going back to this, because I think it's a really good metaphor for life in general. At an event in a group of people, if I'm really comfortable, I can be going around, I'm having nice conversations, I'm just relaxed in my body, you know, and that's all those kinds of qualities that that would be identified as to be natural in yourself. So it's being connected to just our own nature of who we are, or also how when we're really welcomed in our culture, how when we can express our gifts, people will also say, oh, she's such a natural at that, or he's such a natural at that, which just means we're in our natural gift. Yeah, so often these teachings are actually in the phrases in our culture already, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge as well the human life cycle in this and the welcoming. So yeah, what it is to be welcomed from the moment of birth. I've heard so many stories from different Indigenous cultures, how a new human being coming into the world will be welcomed. Even going as far as, you know, catching the song, speaking to the spirit of that being before they're born, catching their song, having them be born, and they're singing their song to them to remind them as they come onto this earth, you know, who they are and what they've come for, which is just
so
very
beautiful.
far removed
Yes,
from a lot of modern Western experiences of coming into the world. And but I also just thought, remembered there as I was listening to you as well, of a number of years ago, maybe, gosh, like 9 years ago or so, I was living in California, and I was living in a house with 7 people, and we had animals, and we were taking care of the land and doing different things together, living in community. And a baby was, so out of those 7 was a couple, and they gave birth while we all lived there together. And they asked everyone to create they wanted to create a patchwork blanket for the baby. So they asked all their dear friends to create one patch that they would sew together. And of course, the ideal was to have this blanket ready as the baby was born, which didn't quite happen because we are living in this fast-paced society. So I actually stitched mine after the baby was born, and I based it on what was happening that night as she was being born. So I heard the coyotes howling, and also the moon was at a particular phase. So what I stitched into this picture was the moon in the sky at the phase when she was born. Ella, there was her name, is her name, and a coyote howling. So it's like this sense of, you know, to welcome in. I mean, to think of that, like your whole community, everyone who is waiting for you to be born, to take the time to create something to welcome you in, and then that to be brought together as a physical holding from the community. And then to have things also stitched in there, like what I stitched of like, and this is not just the humans welcoming you in, this is what nature was doing when you were born, you know, which affects who you are as well. And then how that translates into belonging, actually, of like, this is who I am, like this is where I belong to. This is a part of who I am, this moment I was born into the world.
Gosh, just imagine if everybody was welcomed into the world in that way. And yeah, I've heard stories from friends who are mothers, and how you know, some quite traumatic experiences of their baby being welcomed into the world in a way that felt quite kind of clinical, and not that support, that sense of the village you know, the village being there to kind of welcome both the baby and the woman stepping maybe into motherhood as well, you know, that there's like those rites of passage, you know, the arrival of the baby, but there's also that rite of passage of a woman becoming, you know, a mother in that sense. Also, there are different ways that we can mother in the world, but that feels like a very significant kind of rite of passage for women, and how are they kind of welcomed into that and supported into that. I think that's what I remember during bringing it home and coming across, you know, the human life cycle wheels and that difference between in a connected culture and a disconnected culture, and just really kind of being struck by the difference and what impact that can have from the very beginning, you know, if you're not feeling that sense of really truly being welcomed into the world, into your community, and then the impact obviously that can have at, you know, various stages of life, unless there are opportunities, I guess, to bring kind of healing, you know, to that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that piece in as well, the welcoming that's needed to help us in a healthy way transition to our next life stage, and the importance of that. And just want to name, as we name these things, that maybe those that were listening didn't receive in their life, that it's not too late. I know that I retrospectively did my menarche rites of passage, and I did a women's rites of passage as well. So time is a funny thing.
Yeah,
and there are still opportunities for these things in our life. Those parts within ourselves that maybe weren't welcomed are still in us, and so we can still welcome them. So I'd love to just tie up the conversation with maybe naming some of these threads that we've been talking about. If I think about like a length of yarn and how it's made up of all these different separate strands that create this one strong rope of connection to life. And if that strong rope of connection is welcoming in the East, just want to name the different parts we talked about. So like the welcoming in community events, the welcoming in community, and the welcoming coming into life, the importance of that, and the welcoming at different stages of our life, but also just the general culture of allowance. Like I heard you speak a lot to the importance of that in ourselves, ultimately, that we need to belong to ourselves and welcome all parts of ourselves, but also how we do that, how we support each other in community when we're all a community of practice and committed to doing that together, and how we can support each other in that. Just those layers of the life cycle, the culture of allowance, how we can hold the welcoming in our culture as a principle, and then also how that can all translate into as well how we can run events or run community events or build community in our lives as well, with shared value. Is there anything else you want to add with something, Marielke?
I think the only thing is this sense of how nature can just support us with this when we look to nature, and have that sense of connection to nature, and that helps us also to connect with our inner nature, and that, I know for me, that helps me then connect even more deeply to the outer nature. And it's this beautiful kind of strengthening of connection and ever deepening connection, and just how that can support us in feeling kind of welcome in this world, and that we belong in this world, and and just this sense of care that can come from that, I think, as well. Welcoming and belonging is how important that is in terms of healing and cultural repair, and just even that in its own is, could create such big change that's needed within our cultures, our disconnected cultures. It brings us back into connection, and remembering our true nature.
Thank you, Marielke, and thank you to everyone who's listened and made it this far through our conversation. We really appreciate you taking the time to in your life to explore this topic a little bit with us by listening, and I'm sure you're on your own journey of inquiry around this, and so do feel free to share with us anything you would like around what maybe bubbled up for you in this. And we'll be sharing this video in different ways, and the different mediums will have ways to comment and all of that, so you're very welcome to come into the conversation and do some time bending with us like you were sitting here with us. So go well, and whatever time of year you may be listening to this, it may be quite soon, and so we wish you a really beautiful time of connection to everything that's happening out on the land and how that may nourish you. And if it's at a different time of year, the East, we can bring it alive at any time of year. It's an important part of even our daily life cycle, how to begin our days well. It's always there. The East is never too far. So many blessings to everyone, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.